Hi, everyone. Good evening. Uh, Today we have with us Morris, who is the CMO of one of the world's most forward thinking deep tech companies. Corey would be talking to us about the corporate metaverse 7 rules for success. To give you a brief introduction about Corey was born and raised in Mississippi. His professional journey began at the ripe age of 17 when he decided to join the US Navy. He spent the following 5 years working in the field of meteorology and oceanography. Plus, he traveled across the world. Before joining Synergy XR family, he was the global marketing lead for Airbnb and former CMO of the Danish startup Guest.com, which was acquired by Airbnb in January 2019. So I would now hand over the virtual stage to Corey, and we would love to hear your insights on Metaverse and know more about it. Over to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so very much for that, Anamika. I appreciate the warm introduction, and happy to hear that the biography that I've shared with most of people on LinkedIn actually comes to a fruition. It sounds when I hear it, I'm like I want to meet that person. So that's really good. Great. So welcome everybody. Thanks for dropping in. If you're looking at the screen right now, I'm not sure if you're sharing the screen with people. You may be thinking to yourself, that is a little bit of a different title than what I signed up for. And the reason is because we initially pitched this idea, we've learned a lot. So while we'll still be talking about the 7 rules of the corporate metaverse, we want to zoom out a little bit and really talk about how XR is shaping the future of how we not only work, but also how we live and how we play. And then, of course, once we use that as a jumping off point, then, of course, that'll make more sense when we talk about the 7 rules of the corporate metaverse. I think our time together is roughly 30, 45 minutes of me talking today. I would love for this to be an interactive experience. So if you have any questions, any comments throughout the talk, then feel free to jump in and we'll see if we can take some time to answer some of the questions. If not, then I think there'll be ample time in the Q&A afterwards. So on that note, why don't we just go ahead and get started? So I'm going to move through the deck. A little bit about myself. I think the introduction pretty much did a good job there. As you can probably hear, I have a fairly good American accent. It's because I was born and raised there. I have spent the last 21 years in Denmark. I think the years are ticking by really fast, so I kind of lose track of that. Talked about before, yeah, I've been in the startup world for quite a while. I had the opportunity to work for Airbnb for 2 wonderful years. The pandemic came, couldn't travel. That puts a wrinkle in things. So I'm back in Denmark now, working in another super exciting company called Synergy XR. But I have been working in tech for the last 10 years, and I have been working as an executive in different startup and scale up communities. So that's a little bit about me. I want to start by telling you a little bit about Synergy XR, and I can talk about Synergy XR two ways. I can talk about Synergy XR as the product, but I can also talk about Synergy XR as the company. So let's start with the product, because we're obviously called the same thing. So just to really simplify things, Synergy XR is a no code cloud based platform. So that far so good, but it lets companies design, train, sell, support a bunch of use cases across all XR devices. Now, if those terms don't mean a lot to you right now, don't worry because we're going to dig into that. But that's effectively what we've built over the last 14 years is a no-code cloud-based platform. Now, to understand who we are as a company, we have to go back to 2004 actually, because 2004 Unity Technologies was created in Copenhagen, Denmark. In 2008, the founders of Unity Technologies created Unity Studios. Now, if you would have known us a year ago, you would have known us as Unity Studios. One of my first jobs when I came in as the chief marketing officer was to go take the company through a rebranding process where we went from Unity Studios to Synergy XR. So our name is new, but our company has been around since 2008. So almost 15 years in the XR business, which makes us the pioneers in the industry. Now, 2008 going forward, we were really good at creating customized solutions for some of the world's biggest brands. So everything from Volkswagen, Procter and Gamble, Major League Baseball, Maersk, for example, to mention some of the Danish brands. We've been working with these brands for the last 14, 15 years, back when extended reality wasn't really a term that most people knew. These were companies that wanted to be forward thinking, they wanted to be innovative, they wanted to start working with augmented virtual and mixed reality. But what we came to the realization was is just the same way with the internet when it came around 30 years ago. At some point, people are going to want to do this themselves. And that's effectively why we have shifted slowly from creating custom one-off solutions to creating a platform that lets companies do this a little bit easier. And that's what we call the corporate metaverse builder, just to tie that in with the 7 rules of the corporate metaverse. As I said before, it's a do-it-yourself XR business suite, allows you to share all of your content across augmented, mixed virtual reality, and even PC, because we realize there's a lot of people who don't have a pair of VR glasses, or maybe don't have the right technology with their phone to use augmented reality. But the great thing is that you can toss all this up in the cloud. So your images, your videos, your PDFs, and of course your 3D objects, and you can access them across all applications. We're one of the only in the world who make that possible. And of course, because companies are super focused on privacy, control, and security, that has to be secured in a secure cloud, which we work on the Microsoft Azure cloud platform. So that's a little bit about us, and that's a little bit about our product. Our mission, though, at the end of the day, is to bring XR to the people, to democratize it, if you will, because this is some really deep tech. It's difficult for a lot of people to get their heads around. A lot of it is being developed as we speak, but it's being built at an accelerated pace. At the end of the day, though, we want to make it simple so that everybody, you and I, everybody in the world, can start using this. And on that note, I would like to show you our really cool brand video that we just launched to kind of give you an idea and set the scene for what we're going to be talking about today. I hope it plays. If not, then we'll move on. Let me see if I can get it to start. And you guys can give me some feedback in the studio if sound is not coming through.
This is the story about us, the digital human. This is a story about how we progressed, how we went from nature to city, analog to digital, from meeting face to face to meeting screen to screen, from playing to playing online, from social to isolated. We changed. We felt lonely, disconnected. We questioned ourselves. We blamed our progress, our technologies, our digital inventions. So how do we move forward? Do we trash the inventions? Or do we find a way to use it the right way? Realizing its potential, how it can help us connect, making the digital world more human and not the other way around. Because as humans, that's what we do. We find solutions. We progress like we always have. We discover new ways to be social. We help each other even though we're far away. We live to share, present, and connect with others. We find the physical in the digital, and we are going to make the digital world more human.
All right. I still get chill bumps when when I see that. And it's been almost a year now since we launched that video. So let me see if I can get out of this so we can stop or start moving on. 1 second, guys. I think. Yep. We're gonna have to go back through the slide deck again. Sorry about that. That seems to always happen with when we play videos in PowerPoint. All right, so showed you the video, a brand video. That's super powerful. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Love to hear your feedback on that. We put a lot of time and energy into it, but really it's all about bringing XR to the people, making it something we can get our hands on, and not about making the human world more digital. I think that's really important, but making the digital world more human, because at the end of the day, this technology is all about connecting us, making us smarter, making us more effective at everything that we do. Let's take a step back, though. I often find that when I start throwing a lot of these terms around, like XR and things like that, I can lose a few people. So I just want to take a few minutes and talk about what is extended reality. If some of you out there may not really understand what this term is, so here's a really quick overview that we use. It really puts the whole XR umbrella term, if you will, on a continuum. So XR is a uniform, or an umbrella term, I should say, for augmented, virtual, and mixed reality. On the left, we have augmented reality. That's when you take digital things and you put them on top of the real world. Think, for example, Pokemon Go. I think most of us can get our heads around that, or IKEA Place. Now, on the other side of that, we have virtual reality, which is, for example, if I put on this headset right here, this is the HTC Focus headset. If I put those on, I'm closed off from the world around me, which means that I'm in a completely immersive digital environment. Now, there's a middle ground there as well, which is also really exciting, because imagine if I wore those glasses, but I could still see the world around me. I could project things in front of me digitally, overlay the real world with digital elements, and then be able to use my hands to move those around. That's what is called mixed reality. Microsoft has a product called HoloLens that allows you to do that. It's still very basic. It's only in its second iteration. But there's a lot of talk right now that Apple's new product, which, latest news, breaking news, here's a hot take. The news came out on CNET today that Apple has presented their next AR/VR headset to their board. Now, that's a huge step, because we've been waiting for a long time for something to happen. And that means if they're presenting it to the board, that means it's pretty close to coming to market. So when Apple comes out on the market with their product, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that happens. So now, if we understand what extended reality is, it makes a lot of sense when we talk about the next things, which is, why is everybody talking about XR? Well, one thing to look at is the way we work is rapidly changing. I think we can all agree that the last 3 years has taught us that the way we work is rapidly changing, because things have been accelerated on a completely different time level. Now, if we dig into that a little bit, I think it's important to think about where we work is shifting from being in an office every day, but into being able to work anywhere, anytime. It's also how we work. As I showed you with some of the technology before, right now, most of us are used to using our computers, maybe used to using our phones, but we're seeing new technology come out every day that's changing the devices that we use to how we work. And now nobody thought that most of our time would be spent talking to our colleagues on screens, but that seems to be the new reality. It's what's coming next is what's really exciting. And also, I think another thing that we need to bear in mind is that why we work is also changing. Nobody wants to come to work today just to get a paycheck, or at least most people don't. A lot of people are being driven today by a sense of purpose and a sense of sustainability. And I think this is particularly true for the younger generations who are coming into the job market right now. That's why we think it's never been a better time to invest in the future of work. And I obviously encourage everybody's listening today, and everybody I talk to think about the future of work. And here's the thing. It's because we believe that the future of work is being built in the metaverse as we speak. Now, we use the word metaverse today because it's suddenly become incredibly popular. That happens when you have one of the wealthiest men in the world, like Mark Zuckerberg, change their company name from Facebook to Meta. But I think it's a good thing. Now, it may not be called Meta in the future. It may be called something completely different. But right now, we're sticking with Meta just in the interest of simplicity. I think it's important, though, to really zoom back and look at what are the elements of the metaverse. This is from our friends at Gardner. It's from 2022, so it's really new. And they did an excellent job of really highlighting all the different elements of the metaverse. Now, we're obviously looking at the workplace area, but just bear in mind that the elements of the metaverse are going to affect every which way that we live, that we work, that we play. It's going to be the way it's going to affect the way that we sell things. It's going to be the way affect the way that we buy things. It's going to affect the way that we entertain ourselves. It's going to affect the way that we think about social media today. And I've obviously we look at avatars today and they're pretty rudimentary, but those are going to be changing quite rapidly as well. The key takeaway here though is that the metaverse isn't just one thing. The metaverse is many things. Why is that? That's because the metaverse effectively is just the next iteration of the internet, just the internet in 3D, also known as the spatial internet. We talk a lot about the easiest way to understand that. I tell people, imagine if you could stick your head into your computer and see all those things that you're looking at. In many ways, that's the virtual reality aspect of it. But imagine if all those things you're looking at on your computer were out of your computer and all around you. Well, that's kind of the augmented reality aspect of it. And um, I think I know that's where we're headed, and I'm really excited about it. For those of you who like more textual definitions, here is a really good textual definition for you. I'll just leave it out there for a few seconds so you guys can see it. But this is how it's described by Gartner in their 2022 report. Now, for those of you who are more visually minded, here's a really good example of how it might look. Nobody knows. But what we notice here is that this guy is able to see things in front of him without having a device. The device, as you may notice, he has glasses on. I showed you those big glasses before. That's where we are right now. Who knows? In 5-10 years, we may be able to provide glasses like that. So he's able to display content, display data in front of him without having to have a big computer. How we interact with that data is still being determined, but we probably won't use the controllers that we use in virtual reality today. Also, notice the person walking down the hall. That's not a real person. That's an avatar. But look how lifelike that avatar is compared to the avatars that we have today. Even our own product, our avatars are still pretty basic, but this is where we're headed. And to support that with some facts, here is a report from Gardner, which talks about that by 2026, which is only 4 years from now, guys, they estimate that 25% of the world's population will spend at least 1 hour in the metaverse for work, but also for education, entertainment, social media, shopping, etc. That's a lot of people. If you also look at the evolution of the corporate metaverse, now when we throw the word corporate in front of it, we're talking about how businesses will use the metaverse, just in the same way that how businesses use the internet. Again, when we think the internet and the metaverse are best understood as being synonymous, even though they may not be technically wise, but there are lots of similarities. What we're interested here is where what is the level of disruption for a lot of these things, but also what is, and I think this was from Boston Consulting Group. This is their expected time to market. Some of these things are available today. Some of these things are available first in 5 years. What we like about this is that we're able to put these blue dots on things that we're already able to do today. And I think that says a lot about the market because it's, I hate to use this expression, but in many ways it is kind of a blue ocean. There's so much happening right now, and everybody's just land grabbing, trying to stake a claim into this market. But the interesting thing to look at this, and I'll share these slides with you as well, is it's everything from recruiting, everything from training, everything to having an XR workplace, so a digital copy of your physical office. All the way to VR tourism. Now that's incredibly exciting. Hopefully not that we will have always that will replace tourism. I still want to be able to travel around the world, but if I can see a place in virtual reality before I actually go visit there, that may help me want to go visit in real life. The cool thing is that this is all going to happen over the next 5 years. It's going to become a natural way of living, and we're going to look back in 10, 15, 20 years and kind of smile and say, how did we live without this stuff? In much the same way that we look back over the last 30 years and ask ourselves, how did we manage without the internet? I want to take just a few minutes and to show you guys really when I talk about the corporate metaverse and when I talk about these different use cases in companies, I'd like to show you our product video, which really shows how XR is being used across the entire value chain. Because I think, again, this is one of the things that you need to see to really understand. So I'm going to play this video for you.
To those who've been waiting for a better way to use XR, turn on that computer and start tossing your ideas into the cloud. Well, that was fast. Now put on those fancy goggles and work with colleagues from anywhere to get your product designs just right. Give that production guy a better way to see and fix
So got a little bit of lagging here.
problems fast. And instead of just talking about what you want to build, why not just show it? Make it easier to understand. And don't you think it's time to give your customers a new way to look at what you're selling? Look at that. And when travel is a no-go, just put on those goggles again and meet with them from anywhere, anytime. You know, there is a faster and easier way to onboard and train workers at scale. All you got to do is lay it out just like you want it, and then let workers from here, heck, even here, jump in together and learn at their own pace. And when things break, and we know they will, fix them the smart way, not by traveling, but by letting frontline employees work with remote experts to identify the problem, share helpful information, find solutions together, and get things up and running fast.
Okay, so sorry about all the hacking there. It seems as no matter how fast your internet connection here is in the office, every time you're trying to show videos and type in a presentation, they always seem to react that way. So let's just take a few seconds to look. We've talked about the XR market. We've talked about the metaverse market. Again, when we talk about the XR market, it's almost the same as the metaverse market. Those two things kind of go hand in hand. I just want to take a few seconds to show you, how big this market really is. If you're still in doubt, if you're still not a believer. So, according to a recent study by Citibank, which produced a 186 report, we helped them launch it just a few weeks ago. They estimate that 1 billion people will be using some type of virtual and augmented reality headset by 2030. They expect that 5 billion people will be using the metaverse in some capacity across both PC and XR devices by 2030. There are 7 billion people in the world today. If 5 billion people are using this by 2030, that's a vast majority of the world's population. Now, when it comes to the actual market size, they've topped everybody by estimating it to be $13 trillion. That's a huge number, and that's by 2030. What's exciting about that number is that other studies have come out over the last year, and that number has almost doubled or tripled every time. I think the number we were using before was 600 billion. Now we're at 13 trillion. And I think a lot of that, and also Citi's interest, is the fact that a lot of the fintech world is investing heavily in this. So the way that we shop, the way that we think about NFTs, for example, that will also become a huge player in the metaverse. Just to point this out real quick, if you're thinking that, this is just Corey from Synergy XR talking about this. In fact, it's not. I want to point out that all the big four from big tech are invested. 20% of Facebook's employees right now are working on their Meta solution. That's more than 10,000 people. Apple, their second largest department right now, second to the iPhone, is working on their next AR/VR headset. That says a lot about from the world's most valued company. Microsoft, they're closing major deals with industry. For example, they just closed a $22 billion deal to use the Microsoft HoloLens for the U.S. military. And Google they're taking a different show. They've been doing this for a while. Remember, they came out with Google Glasses well before anyone else. But what they're doing is they're acquiring tons of companies right now. This one was for 180 million. Just recently, they acquired one for, I think it was also triple digit million numbers. But so nobody really knows what they're building. But I can tell you one thing: they're building something. Now, I've talked a little about XR, what it means. I've talked a little bit about the use cases. I've talked a little bit about the whole XR industry, what it is, and why everybody's excited about it. So, in much the same way as companies had to enter the internet 30 years ago, they probably found out really quickly that there was a different set of rules for companies. We feel the same way about the metaverse. There needs to be a separate set of rules for companies, and that's what we call the 7 rules of the corporate metaverse. And I just want to walk you through them real quickly. Now, we're not going to dig into them too much. What I would recommend that all of you do is read our ebook on this, or maybe just go to our website and check out the full article, which is going to flesh out a lot of these concepts. But we can use these as jumping off points for our Q&A afterwards. So I think the first thing to bear in mind is that organizations can have their own corporate metaverse. Now, the reason I point this out is because a lot of people think that the metaverse is just one thing. Bear in mind, just like companies have their own websites today, companies can have their own corporate metaverse. I think, again, it's really important to think of the metaverse as the internet. So just the same way that companies have their own websites today, companies will be able to have their own corporate metaverse. And that's obviously one of the things that we're talking to a lot of companies about is like, how do you get started? How do you dip your toe into the corporate metaverse? What we don't have right now is, like the internet, we don't have a way for all these different corporate metaverses to be connected. It's not so much a network yet. There's no URL system in place where people can go on to www. whatever and suddenly be in a metaverse and then suddenly just connect to another metaverse. That doesn't exist yet. The standards aren't there yet, but trust me, they will be built. How they'll be built, that's to be determined. We don't think any type of government agencies will come in and take over. We think that it will have to be a partnership, a collaboration with some of the big players, but that will have to happen in order for it to reach the so-called tipping point. Now, rule number 2 is that the corporate metaverse is for everyone in your organization. What we mean by that is that if you look across your entire value chain, it's everyone who's going to take advantage of this. Everything from recruiting new hires all the way to servicing and maintaining your machines. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the good old your company value chain, but if you are, think about that. It's every aspect of your process. And I think that's important to think about because just like the internet affects every employee within your organization today, so will the corporate metaverse. It's not just for the IT people. It's not just for one department. It will be for everyone in your organization, and it will be used in, I'll go so far as to say, virtually everything that you do at some point in time, in much the same way that the internet influences to some degree everything that we do today. It'll just be done a little bit differently. Rule number 3, I think this is very important. You control your own corporate metaverse. You have the golden key. And it's much the same way that you control your website today. You control your physical properties. You have the key. You obviously don't want everybody coming in. On our own website, we control access to our backend. The same way applies to the corporate metaverse. And I think that's important. That control is not going to belong to someone else. This is something that you have to have control over, because let's face it, as organizations, we have to protect our intellectual property. We have to protect our employees. Privacy, control, and security are paramount for companies. And it will be even more so in the corporate metaverse, because a lot of the rules that apply today for the internet will still apply for the corporate metaverse, but a lot of things aren't really defined yet because we're still trying to figure it out. Rule number 4, the corporate metaverse is open if you're invited. In much the same way as you're not going to let everyone into your website, or let's just say the back end of your website, and the same way that you're not going to let everyone into your physical office space, the same thing applies to the corporate metaverse. Again, going back to control, going back to security, going back into privacy. We need to have these safeguards in place to protect our employees, to protect our intellectual property, protect the information that's being shared within the organization. The same thing applies to the corporate metaverse. So you're going to have a big balancer like this guy right here protecting you. And that's important. And that's also why, for example, companies are building their metaverses on top of enterprise grade cloud solutions like Microsoft. Now, a lot of companies are entering the market with metaverse solutions, and these companies are maybe more geared towards B2C customers. Not to take a shot at Facebook, but that's exactly what Facebook is doing. They're more focused on the end user, the consumer, and not really focused on the needs that companies have when they're trying to build their corporate metaverses. I think it's also important to remember that the corporate metaverse is hardware independent. I showed you a few devices before, everything from an iPhone to an Oculus Quest. Actually, it's called Meta Quest headset now, to an HTC Focus. It's important to remember that the metaverse should not be built based upon hardware requirements. The metaverse should be independent of hardware. In fact, the hardware should follow suit to how the metaverse is being developed. Do they enable one another? Do they empower one another? Absolutely. But it's also important for us to remember that not everybody is going to have the state of the art iPhone. Not everybody's going to have access to the VR headsets. That's also why we need to think about making the first iterations of the metaverse available through PC. Like we show in this diagram here, it's a process. You start with the PC and then you escalate from there. I think that's important for us to increase early adoption of the metaverse. Rule number 6, we're making progress. The corporate metaverse is a network. As I talked about before, it's not just one silo. The corporate metaverse, as the way that we envision it, is just very much like the internet today, where it's people connecting between different metaverses. So let's imagine, a really good analogy is that you go to a website, and then once you're finished with that website, you go over to another website. In the future, we feel as though the corporate metaverse will be that way. It'll also be the same way for your company, the way you explore your file system today, the way you explore, maybe you have your type of in-house chat systems, file sharing systems, things like that. This is the same thing applies to the corporate metaverse. It's just kind of your behind the scenes version of how your company will operate on the internet of the future. So the last one, the corporate metaverse is your intranet. Now, we spend a lot of time talking about using the word intranet because it's not used that often. The only reason we use this term is because we want to differentiate between the internet, in much the same way that intranets are kind of these closed off environments. They're private spaces. They're not open to the public. Most companies today use some type of Microsoft Teams, or maybe they use Slack, or maybe they use some type of internal chatting service. This is also important to think about in terms of the corporate metaverse. Just imagine that being in a more 3D spatial environment where you don't have to interact with your screen, or you don't have to interact with your phone, but you do have this closed off, safe space to share information, to accelerate knowledge sharing, to also boost collaboration, because you're going to have your employees spread across the globe. So those guys were really a high level look at the 7 rules of the corporate metaverse. Here's my contact details. Feel free to talk to me by email. Give me a buzz if you want to connect there, or you can follow me on LinkedIn at John Corey Morris. I'd also like to encourage you guys to if you want to go and check out Synergy XR. We do obviously have a free trial. You can go in, try it across AR, try it across VR, even try it across MR if you want to. And that was it. Looking forward to diving into some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corey. We have a few questions, and
Sure.
I'll invite my colleague Rohit to ask you those questions now.
Sure.
Hi, Corey. Amazing presentation. Thank you so much for this. Corey, I have a very very basic and fundamental question. In a country like India, and we are, and that's something that viewer has also asked. We are way behind. the curve. The stuff that you've just spoken, I mean, we've just only heard about it. For an example, there are no except I think Samsung, Facebook does not even have a headset here in India which I can go out and buy. What do we Indian brands do in the scenario that we are in? Do we wait for our time, for our capabilities to become better? What are your suggestions for Indian brands where as I said, we are way behind the curve, and what do we do then?
That's a great question. And I probably don't have a really good answer for you. But I do know that not doing anything at all is obviously probably not the best route. I mean, I think that's true for not only India. There are probably lots of places in the world who are not as digital forward as maybe we are in Denmark. I mean, I think it's a blessing to kind of be where we are because we have the infrastructure. We have the entire system that kind of supports this. But there are, I mean, let's be honest, there are also places in the United States where I'm from, for example, where this could very well be the case. And there aren't that, I mean, the accessibility to these VR headsets. Facebook hasn't done a great job of meeting the demand. I know even in Denmark, there have been periods where it's been nearly impossible to get your hands on the headsets. Having said that, I mean, you really don't need that much to get started. Like I talked about before, a, l- a lot of our users actually use the PC. So if you have a computer, if you have a fairly stable internet connection, then you can actually dip your toe into the metaverse. And I think that's where people are going to start. Talking before about it does, the metaverse doesn't have to be hardware dependent. We know very well that it's going to take a while before a people can get access to this technology, the hardware, and B that the hardware is probably going to be at a price point, and at a level where people are going to where we'll see the mass adoption. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of people walking around the streets. Let's be honest. You're not going to have a lot of people walking around the streets wearing these. But as soon as the technology gets to a point where it's more socially accepted, should we say, then I think that's where we'll see the adoption. And that you may be thinking, well, that seems really far away. It's not. I mean, we're expecting in the next 5 years. If you look at the projections of the sale of VR headsets, I think there's been maybe 15 million sold worldwide, but that number is expected to grow to 100 million just over the course of the next few years. I think you have this big race right now with Apple, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft all rushing to the market on the hardware side. We're obviously on the software side, so we have to work with them. But we're very conscious of there being, let's just say, I don't know if what's the right word there being a lot of differences in how different countries and how people are willing and able to adopt this, which is also why we're trying to make this as accessible as possible without actually having to have all of this state of the art hardware. So that's a really long way of answering your question. I guess in summary, I would just say take advantage of the options that are there. But for people who want to work in this, I can tell you that if you have any type of skill in coding in Unity or Unreal, or if you're really good at creating digital assets, 3D assets, there is a huge potential for you in the market because there is a lack of those skill sets right now.
Right. You'd spoken about how COVID, I mean, accelerated the growth. I mean, especially in the work environment wherein we're now so used to interact with leaders like you over the internet, and that's something that has accelerated the growth. Do you think this will continue in a post COVID world? What are your thoughts there? And especially in a developing country like us, which is more in a sense very face to face, and I'm assuming all other developing countries are like this. What are your thoughts on how this shift would it impact the scale and the growth of projected metaverse, the way the leaders are thinking?
Yeah, so let me repeat the question to make sure I understood it. So you're asking, how has the whole pandemic kind of accelerated the whole metaverse area of focus? Well, I think first of all, the fact that a lot of companies, had to send their employees home for extended periods of time, and then suddenly, they were able to work from wherever they wanted to, maybe get out of the city or whatever. And I think they realized, wow, we can still keep our companies, successful without actually having to have them in the physical office. It was incredibly challenging because having to have, your work day and interaction with your colleagues go through a 2D screen. Maybe it was fun and exciting in the beginning, but we saw, massive cases of Zoom fatigue because again, it's not the same as being next to one another. I mean, everything is less spontaneous. You don't have the so-called water cooler conversations. Um, but I think from a company leader perspective, I think we were able to see, wow, this could actually work to some capacity. Maybe we could have a post-COVID hybrid work model, which I think we're seeing now. Some companies are going to the extreme. My former CEO, Brian Chesky, just came out a few weeks ago and said, Airbnb will allow everybody to work remotely if they want to. I think that works for some people. I also think that there's people like me who want to come to the office from time to time and actually see other people. But I do believe it gives us as employees the freedom and flexibility to have some sense of work-life balance. If there is anything called work-life balance, I call it life. I mean, um, but I also think it's going to help companies maybe or decrease overhead and become a little bit more efficient and productive. I think it's going to open up a huge recruitment pool, a talent pool for companies if they start thinking about that the person doesn't have to live within a certain radius. My colleagues who were based in San Francisco, I'm pretty sure they're loving the fact they don't have to take the 2-hour commute to the office every day. I think, but I mean, again, we can't ignore the negative side as well. And let's be honest, nobody knows what the long term implications of this is yet because we're doing it right now. I would like to see the studies of how this impacts us as companies, but also employees over a 5-10 year basis.
Yeah, now that you were talking about the disadvantages, there is a question that has come. Do you think metaverse will occupy our daily lives, and what are the disadvantages? Like
I
you,
think again, I like to tell people to say, just consider it the next natural evolution of the internet. So ask yourself, how much has the internet helped us? How much has the internet hurt us? I think there's arguments for both sides. I mean, look what social media has done to many of us. There's good things. I love being able to instantly connect with people around the world. I think there's a democratization of knowledge on many levels, but there's also a long-term social impact that we may not have witnessed yet. Uh, I have my concerns for the next generation, but that's also because I'm a parent and I have to look at my teenage kids and it's like I don't understand you, but I think that's true for any parent with teenage kids. What I don't want, if any of you guys have seen the movie Ready Player Me, it's a great movie. But what I truly hope is that we don't become this dystopian society who doesn't really want to live in the real world and chooses a virtual world instead. Again, that's why our focus is on making the digital world more human and not the other way around because I see no future in that. I see it as being able to communicate visually in a way that we've never been able to do before. I mean, and I mean that we've never really been able to use 3D this way. I think it can be a huge boon to how we share knowledge, how we tell stories, how we accelerate our learning and understanding. Uh, but I mean, there will always be downsides to this new technology. We don't even have, really good rules or ethics for how to manage the internet. And the governments have been really slow to come in and intervene. And that started 30 years ago. I hope that we've learned something so that we can apply some type of guardrails, if you will, for using the metaverse.
my absolute last question would be before we wrap this up. Uh, we spoke about brands. My first question was about how what Indian brands are there. Are there examples or the brands that you admire for the work that they are doing in this domain? And are there any brands that one could learn from, the
Yeah,
kind of work that they're putting together?
sure. And if I could do a little shameless plug, it's funny you mentioned that because we get that question a lot. So we just released a new article called 12 Ways Companies Are Using XR in 2022, which is filled with a tons of really good examples all across the retail vertical to the training vertical to the medical vertical. Yeah, just to mention a few companies, Nike is doing a lot of interesting stuff. Nike's always, a step ahead, so it doesn't come as a surprise. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence about the whole NFT thing, but they're patenting NFTs of their entire Jordan line and things like that. But they're also doing some really cool stuff in their retail stores, so that you can come in and use augmented reality to customize sneakers and maybe extend or augment that experience of being in the store, which I think is really great because I think the retail experience is really threatened right now as we move to more online shopping. Um, in that article, I can just talk about some of the examples there just to connect the dots. We talk about Jaguar that's using it to acquire talent. So they give these the applicants a challenge, and I don't remember if it's an augmented or virtual reality, but they have to do some type of challenge, some type of test, and so they do that in a talent acquisition phase. You have Timberland, the retail company that's creating augmented reality fitting rooms. So imagine the dream of going to a store and not having to take your clothes off to try clothes on, but you can just take a screen and actually see how the clothes fit. There are lots of companies, I can't recall the name of them right now, who are in the fitness area, which are allowing you to maybe do like at home fitness using augmented and virtual reality. But I mean, look, if you look across most major global brands right now, another thing to think about is look at how people's job titles are changing. Over the course of the last 2 years, I've seen so many new job titles that include something with XR or Metaverse. And I think that's because it's been a wake up call to a lot of companies that this is the next iteration of of the internet. This is the future of work. It's not in the future. It's here. It's now. And we have to start now. We have to probably fail, but fail fast, and then learn. But then we'll be better positioned for when this really takes off. Which I think is just we're already beginning to see the early stages of it right now.
There's one more question that has come
Sure.
from the viewer.
Mhm.
There's a, I mean, and the question is around privacy issues. There is a lot of noise about privacy issues. How will metaverse escalate the challenge, or will it minimize the privacy
Privacy
woes?
woes, yeah. That's a great question, and I don't, to be honest with you, we don't really know. I mean, we're working in the corporate metaverse, so everything that we do has to be super secure. I mean, we have to go through the tons of certifications to make sure that people feel comfortable sharing their company's secrets in the metaverse. That's also kind of that's how we differentiate ourselves from a lot of the other companies. I mean, I would be concerned I would be concerned joining a lot of the commercial activities that are out there right now because I don't really think the rules have been written in terms of privacy. Let's just say this virtual reality, you're there as an avatar. It's not really you, but I mean, here's a funny story. Uh, when Meta or Facebook recently launched I think it's called Horizons Workroom, what they ended up having to do afterwards was create a privacy space around the avatars because people were getting too close. People were like just like coming up in your face in an avatar. And even though it's an avatar, people felt it's like, whoa, get out of my space. This is my private space. And they, when they originally launched the product, they didn't think about stuff like that. So in terms of your data, also when we start buying things in the metaverse and we're buying things using cryptocurrency, I don't think anybody's got it figured out, but I think the most important thing is that consumers and companies continue to push back. They continue to raise these questions because the onus the people responsible for that, they need to know that this is an expectations from the end user and from the consumer.
Sure, and I wanted to. We rarely get a chance to speak to leaders like yourself. So, uh, you also spoke about new job creations, new job titles, etc., which essentially means there would be a lot of jobs that shall get created as part of the ecosystem, as and when the ecosystem grows. And I one of the viewer has also uh, asked the similar set of question. What kind of skill sets would these new people should have or would have to be part of the metaverse, corporate metaverse, or metaverse in general?
Yeah. So if just like people got really good at HTML back when the internet came out, you need to get really good in Unity. You need to get really good in Unreal. The metaverse will be built on those two engines. Obviously, we favor Unity because we're from the Unity family. Um, that's one side of it. The other is any type of 3D design, any type of a 3D environment design. Also, just designing in general, thinking of user experience, user interface design within XR environments. There aren't a lot of people out there right now who are experts in this. So again, I'm happy to be having this conversation with you because this is a big secret right now. It's like if you guys are looking for your next big career move, this is where it's going to be. And I'll be honest with you, people who are really good at designing and developing this stuff, um, their let's just say their compensation is going to be it's going to be really high. They're in high demand, absolutely. And given the fact that you can work from anywhere, I mean that's a win-win. So yeah, big shout out to all you guys. If we're looking for skills or people with these skills. So uh, if you got them, then reach out to us, and if you don't, then get them as quickly as you can, and then reach out to us.
Absolutely. Will again, sorry, I'm just extending your stay here.
Oh, it's
Will
okay.
crypto
It's okay.
will cryptocurrencies become a part of metaverse and change the face of the economy?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm not a cryptocurrency expert, but we have been working together with Citibank over the last few months, helping them put out their report. Absolutely. I think everybody knows now that we're going to a cashless society. Some companies are doing this more than others. Whether or not that our trust in the banking system and the way we think about currency today will erode completely, I don't know. I definitely see my kids in the future working more in cryptocurrency, but that's also a fairly unregulated market, maybe by design. But I do think when we were already seeing the early stages of being able to use these in NFT. Um, we have one of our, I really wouldn't call them a competitor. They're probably one of our, collaborators. It's called Spatial. Spatial's recently taken a pretty big pivot to where they're in the NFT market. So I'm not sure exactly what currency they use to purchase the NFTs, but it wouldn't surprise me if you had the option of buying in some type of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. Yeah.
Oh, thank you,
These are great
Corey.
questions, by the way.
Yeah, no, I think India, while
The last question was good too, if you want to take that.
is metaverse going to be successor to the mobile internet?
Absolutely. So the way, and I'm really happy she asked that question. Var, I'm sorry, you're not a girl. Sorry. I'm really happy you asked that question because what I like to explain to people is like we had the first iteration of the internet that was the computer, maybe a laptop. The second iteration called Internet 2.0, that was the mobile internet. So that was when we had the iPhone. Basically, was the huge enabler with the apps and everything. This we're looking at now, I'm not going to, you could call it Internet 3.0, but that also has other implications. This is absolutely the next iteration of the internet with the very cool addition that we're not only going to be tethered to our screens that we're looking at today or our phones, but we're going to have wearable devices that basically take the internet and let us stick our head in the internet as we know it today, or have elements of the internet all around us. That combined with the advancements in IoT I mean, suddenly everything is going to be connected to the internet. So you'll be able to interact with these things with voice commands. You'll be able to look at your your temperature thing on the wall, your thermometer, and you'll be able to see the data there. You won't have to go up to it, or you can maybe just talk to it and it'll tell you what it is. So again, these are things that I feel make our lives better. They make our lives smarter. They provide information that maybe kind of, I don't know, maybe it helps get rid of a lot of the pain points that we have to deal with today. Bearing very well in mind though that things are going to be pushed that also are going to maybe encourage us to buy more. So, I mean, there has to be a business case behind this, that and there is. Obviously, advertising is one. The other is probably getting you to buy stuff. Amazon's a great example. They've done so many things over the last few years. I mean, you're just one click away from buying stuff. The same thing will apply for the metaverse. So just remember, I mean, the internet's a business. The metaverse is going to be a business as well. So it's there to help you, but it's also there to make money.
With the kind of questions that have come, I think Synergy XR should be in India, and we should be in India soon, and we would definitely would want you to be there whenever you want to travel and take you to the brands here in India.
Sure.
Thank you, Corey, for your time. Anamika, over
My
to you.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, thank you very much. I have a question for you now.
Sure.
So, though everything sounds very promising about metaverse, but I have a feeling that it is going to render us all lazy somehow. I mean, yeah. So that's one thing. So, how quick should we expect this metaverse invasion to happen?
It's already happening. It's
Okay.
already happening. I mean, and again, like we just shared this recent article to give people more clarity about, the companies they're actually coming to market with these solutions now, which means they've probably been working on them for the last few years.
Right.
Again, we've been working with companies for the last almost 15 years, work in the very first iterations of the metaverse. We have tons of clients right now using the Synergy XR platform to start creating their own corporate metaverse. So obviously we're still in the early stages, but what I'd like to do is disabuse people of the idea that you can wait because this is something that's going to happen in the future. It's happening right now. And that's the one thing that we encourage all leaders to think about is now is the time to start getting into it. Now is the time to start, incubating this in certain parts of your company and start, getting your head around it. Start, learning early and figuring out how your company is gonna work with it. As we say, the early bird gets the worm. And nobody wants to be the next blockbuster. So they kept writing off that the whole streaming thing was never going to come. It was Netflix. Yeah, that wasn't serious. And look how things are now.
Yeah, I get that. Thank you very much, Corey. It was really, really amazing listening to you. Lot
Thank
of
you.
insights we have gained today, and I'm pretty sure our audience has have their questions answered. And we look forward to inviting you here, as Rohit mentioned. Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you.
great
Yeah,
evening.
and a last announcement to everybody. If you have any questions that we didn't get a chance to dig into today, feel free to hook up with me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy to try to address them there. But again, yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.